Hello everyone, welcome to my class. Today we are going to learn a story and the name of the story is The Woodcutter and Death. So let's see who are the characters. The characters are Woodcutter, Death, Lord Shiva, other gods and a woman. So there are 5 characters in the story. Now let's start. The title is The Woodcutter and Death and the author is Elida Gersi. So this story, The Woodcutter and Death, is written by Elida Gersi. Now let's start the plot. Long ago, there lived a woodcutter. The woodcutter was very honest and helpful too. He was very kind-hearted. So everyone in the village loved him a lot. He also was always ready to help others. But the thing is that the woodcutter was economically and physically weak. He was very poor and could scarcely make his ends meet. Means the woodcutter was totally dependent on the woods. Every morning, he used to wake up early and go to the forest. He used to cut woods, make bundle, and used to go to the market to sell it. So the money he earned by selling the woods was his only source of income. He was dependent on that money. If any day he could not collect the woods, he would not earn the money. Though he was old, he could not stop his daily work because stopping his work would stop his life. So cutting the woods was a profession as well as a compulsion for him. So one day, as usual, he woke up early in the morning. Then he went to the forest and gathered a lot more woods than usual. He made a big bundle of that woods. He thought that he would make a lot of money that day and was very excited for that. But as he bent down to lift and keep the bundle onto his shoulders, he found that he was too frail to raise the bundle. Now let's see the next. In a moment, all his happiness turned into sadness. He was too depressed of his age. He took a long deep breath. He sighed. He started cursing his own age. Out of such a distress, he happened to curse himself. He uttered, "If only I were dead." This means he was pessimist at the moment. He didn't see worth living. He thought since he was unable to do any kind of work, he lost the right of survival. He extended his wish to die. Simply, he invited the death. So suddenly someone stood next to him. It was a strange voice asking him if the woodcutter calls him. The woodcutter paused for a moment. He looked around and saw a stranger appear out of nowhere. He had not seen anyone coming or going. So he was filled with terror seeing the stranger. He replied, No, I didn't. It's not me who called you." He lied in fear. Actually, he numbed in terror. He didn't know what to reply. Death knew that the human standing next to him was lying. He ignored the old man's clumsy deception. Clumsy deception means the confused state of mind. Death made himself known. He said that he had come because he was called. The woodcutter became less frightened and looked at Death. He found it very hard to believe that this was really Death. Seeing the old woodcutter's doubt, Death thought of making his true identity. Death pointed at a woman who was taking bath in a nearby pond. He said that the woman would die. He had come to take that woman. The woodcutter stared at the woman because he was curious. The woman suddenly slipped, fell down into the water, and died. This immediately brought the woodcutter to his senses. He remembered why he wanted to die. Since the death was there, he thought of taking his help. The death helped him to carry the bundle onto his shoulders. Then the woodcutter hurried home because he was convinced that the stranger was the real Death. He was too much scared now, so he just wanted to run away from the Death. While he was about to run, a thought appeared in his mind. He wanted to know the remaining time span of his survival, because that day he encountered whom? The death. And he knew that only the death had the answer of his question. So he asked how much longer he had to live. The death closed his eyes, then opened and said 5 years to a day. It means starting from the day when they met, he had only 5 years to spend on this earth. The woodcutter went home. He was too restless. He could not sleep very well that night. Too much was thought hunted him. Too much was thought means he was terribly disturbed. Whole night he just thought of an idea to escape the death. Though he was old, he did not feel like dying. Next morning, he woke up and went to the forest. He searched the biggest tree. He found it. At first, he cut a single hole in the bottom of the tree. Then slowly he started carving out the inside of the trunk. He spent his days and nights carving the tree. It took him exactly 5 years to carve it. Then the death returned, just as he had said he would. Seeing death, the woodcutter promised to go along. But before he was ready to leave the world, he wanted death to see what he did as a gift for the people who would live long after he died. This was his last wish, to show the outcome of his 5 years to death. It is said that the last wish of the person is always fulfilled. So the death also said that he would be glad to fulfill the last wish made by the woodcutter, who was about to leave the earth soon. Then they both went to the forest, deep into the forest. At last, they reached the big tree. The woodcutter requested him to take a look at his work. Death climbed into the tree trunk, being very curious to see what the woodcutter had made. Proudly, the woodcutter showed him round and round. But when Death was in the top of the tree, the woodcutter ran outside. He had already kept a log. Log means a big piece of wood. After coming out, he sourced the same log and then he kept it in the entrance of the tree. Then he hurried home. That means Death was trapped in the tree. Now he could not come out because the entrance was blocked. Time passed. People and animals gave birth, but death came to no one. There was just a growth in the population because nobody died. You can imagine the situation if there is the rise in population every few seconds and if there is no any death. Then what will happen on the earth? You can just imagine. So many people means many mouths. Food production can't be increased according to the mouth, according to the increment in the mouth. When there is less food, hunger spread everywhere. People died because of hunger too. Hunger was everywhere, but people could not die at a time. People suffered from different kinds of illness, but could not die. Everyone was suffering. The situation was pathetic on the earth, so the gods also became alarmed. They went to Lord Shiva for help. So, Lord Shiva wore the garb of human being, means he disguised himself and he came down to the earth. Till this time, the woodcutter, who was old before, had become too much older and weaker too. The woodcutter was so ill that he could not even leave his resting place. Means he could not get up from his bed or walk. Lord Shiva went to his hut and asked him whether he still wanted to live or not. The woodcutter, before he could not lift a bundle of wood, but now he could not lift his own body from the bed. So finally he acknowledged that he was ready to die. Lord Shiva told him that he could help him. He told woodcutter to show the tree where death was locked. Then Lord Shiva and the woodcutter both went to the forest. They searched for the tree, and after they found the tree, the woodcutter removed the log From the entrance means he opened the door. Now finally, Lord Shiva released Death. Death was greatly affected by the painful experience. Then he pleaded Lord Shiva to make him invisible because he was tricked by a human being. He was trapped. Next time, another human might also trick on him. So he asked Lord Shiva to make him invisible. Now Lord Shiva said, so it be. So from that day onwards, Death had been invisible to humankind, though he sees all of us, and finally, the old and weak Woodcutter, he died. So this is the end of the story. Nobody who takes birth on the earth can stay forever on this earth. The one who takes birth on the earth must die one day. This is the law of nature, and we should accept this fact. So this is the end of the story. The woodcutter who did not want to die before, lastly he accepted that he had to die, and he died. Now, after this, you have some questions. Please answer these questions properly. Write the questions, then after write the answer, and after you write question and answer, leave 2 lines and draw underlines. Do this work in good handwriting and in presentation, best presentation.